They say every company has a smell that tells the truth before the numbers do. Ours was a cocktail of burnt coffee, carpet cleaner, and stale ambition. The kind that coats your throat and makes even good people speak in bullet points. I'd spent 8 years breathing it in, not as a martyr, as the person who made sure the lights stayed on when the pitch decks got brave. My name is Lauren. If you ever used our platform and it didn't collapse during a holiday surge, that was me. If a client insisted they'd discovered a bug at 10:07 p.m. on a Saturday and it magically vanished by 10:21, me again. I was the person who knew where the real bodies were buried. Not in HR, but in the handoffs, the silent cues, the fragile places where vision meets cron jobs and fails quietly unless someone loves it enough to check the logs. I was not loved. I was tolerated. Like a fire door you only notice during a drill. The trouble arrived wearing a slim-fit suit and a new last name. Evan married into power and decided it fit him. Overnight, he became VP of Transformation, which in practical terms meant he renamed Slack channels, added emojis to roadmaps, and held meetings about meetings. He called our on-prem dusty, our billing workflows grandma code, and our clients replaceable. He called me Laura twice. I corrected him once. Here's the thing I learned. When insecurity is dressed in status, it gets loud. It starts brainstorming in verbs it can't define. It hires consultants to diagram the exact bridges it will soon burn, and if that fails, it invents urgency. The calendar invite landed at 3:41 p.m. No subject line beyond quick sync, HR, no agenda, no context. Dispatches like that don't come with questions. They come with choreography. I closed the ticket I was triaging, pushed my chair back, and took the long way around the floor. People looked busy the way people do when they're afraid to make eye contact. The office plants had more water than our runbooks. Inside the HR glass box, Evan sat on the table's edge like he owned gravity. His tie was loosened just enough to suggest he had somewhere more important to be. Probably a mirror. Beside him, our HR manager, Sonia, held a branded folder like a priest with a pamphlet. "Lauren," he said, finally getting it right. "Let's keep this efficient." That word, efficient. It's what you say when you're about to ruin someone's week and you want to sound like a spreadsheet. "We're restructuring," he continued, flashing teeth that never learned discretion. "The company is moving in a bold direction, and some legacy roles no longer map to the future." Legacy. I've learned that in corporate dialect, legacy can mean history, stability, and the very backbone funding your bold direction. But today, it meant me. Sonia slid the folder toward me. I didn't open it. You don't need to read the last page of a book if you've already survived the plot in other languages. "We truly appreciate your service," she said softly. Service. Like I'd been bussing tables, not preventing a catastrophic double-charge rollout by writing a guardrail at 2 a.m. and emailing a thank you to a junior dev who spotted the edge case I missed. I let the silence expand until it became a room we all had to sit inside. Evan broke first, tapping his watch. "If you could hand in your badge, laptop, and—" "Evan." I set the badge on the table, face up, the way you leave a key on a kitchen counter when you know you're not coming back. "Congratulations, you're terminated," is how you wanted this to sound, right? Clean, final, victorious. He blinked, confused, like a dog hearing its name in a different accent. "I'm not here to break anything," I said evenly. "I'm done fixing the things you broke." He smirked, reflex more than thought. "We'll be fine. We have a migration plan." Of course they did. It was a Canva flowchart that looked excellent at 300% zoom and dissolved on contact with reality. The plan assumed authentication would behave like a brochure. It assumed our invoices would reconcile across environments through sheer charisma. It assumed that the person who'd been manually stitching together bad decisions with careful scripts would always be there to stitch. "I've spent years documenting what could be documented," I said. "But there are things you only learn by waking up at 4 a.m. to listen to a system breathe. You can't outsource heartbeat." Sonia's eyes flicked to me. Human. Worried. I liked her in that moment. Not because she could stop anything, but because she knew she couldn't and still wished she could. I stood, folding the severance letter without looking at it. "You have exactly 10 minutes before the system fails," I said, calm, like reporting tomorrow's weather. "Say hi from me to your father-in-law and wish him luck." Evan's smile stalled. "Excuse me?" "10 minutes," I repeated, not because I pulled a plug. Because I stopped holding one. The patching runs that kept your shiny experiments from corrupting billing? Mine. The fallbacks that caught the API when you turned off the old endpoint before turning on the new one? Mine. The compliance alarms you silenced last quarter because they were negative energy? They were warning you, not me. He glanced at Sonia, then at the badge. I watched the math crawl across his face. Arrogance is fast. Comprehension is slower. Panic, though, that one sprints. "This is a threat?" he tried. "It's a reminder," I said. "Gravity works whether you believe in it or not." For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The office hum pressed in, the printer clicking, a distant laugh that didn't know better yet. The AC pushing cold air onto cold shoulders. I slid the laptop across the table, turned toward the door, then paused. "Document everything from here," I told Sonia, not him. "Save your emails to your personal account. If anyone tells you not to, write that down too." Then I walked out through a maze of brand new motivational posters. Dream in iterations, speed loves courage, we are our metrics, and thought about the difference between noise and signal. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam a door. I took the stairs. On the landing between floors, my phone buzzed once. An automated ping I'd forgotten to disable. The last orphaned echo of my midnight caretaking. I watched it fade. 10 minutes isn't a long time unless you know exactly what starts gasping at 9. When you've been the invisible glue for years, you develop an instinct for the moment it starts to peel. It doesn't come with alarms or fireworks. It's smaller, like the flick of a dying light bulb, a whisper in the logs that only you hear. That's what I carried with me as I left the glass box. Badge surrendered, laptop sliding out of my hands like a body I didn't need to resuscitate anymore. I didn't head straight home. I walked 2 blocks to a coffee shop with peeling paint on the walls and tables too close together, the kind of place where no one cares if you sit for hours nursing a cup. I ordered black coffee I knew would taste burnt and a blueberry muffin I had no appetite for. My hands weren't shaking, but my chest buzzed with that low hum of adrenaline, the kind that feels like a secret trying to crawl out of your ribs. From the window, I could see the mirrored side of our office building. 15th floor. The same row of blinds I'd stared at for years during late nights when only the vending machine and I kept vigil. Now, I sat outside the glass box, watching. For the first time in nearly a decade, I didn't owe it my heartbeat. I told Evan he had 10 minutes. That wasn't melodrama. 10 minutes is how long it takes for one of my scripts. My scripts, not the company's. To realize it no longer has the permissions it needs. At first, nothing happens. The dashboards stay green, the graphs look steady. People keep sipping their overpriced smoothies, believing they're in control. But then the edges fray. A client invoice doesn't reconcile. A request times out. A queue overflows and the monitor blinks a warning that looks minor until it isn't. Most of the staff can't tell the difference between an error and a hiccup, but hiccups become coughing fits if no one knows how to clear a throat. I sipped my coffee and let the bitterness anchor me. The thought crossed my mind. Should I have left a trail? A set of instructions tucked in a shared folder? An anonymous email to the 2 junior engineers I trusted, the ones who actually asked questions instead of nodding like bobbleheads during meetings? But then I remembered Evan's smirk. The way he tapped his watch like my career was just a stopwatch to burn through. The way he said legacy as if it were rot instead of roots. I had given this company 8 years of my life. Not just time, but pieces of myself. Sleepless nights, missed dinners, birthdays where I muted family calls because a server migration couldn't wait. And for what? To be dismissed in a glass room by a son-in-law who thought Canva slides counted as innovation. Number. I owed them nothing. The first sign arrived quicker than expected. An email bounced. then 2, then a dozen. I refreshed the news feed and saw a vendor post on LinkedIn. Due to technical issues with our partner system, fulfillment operations are temporarily paused. That word, temporarily, was corporate code for, we have no idea what's happening. My phone buzzed. First, it was Sandra from finance. Hey Lauren, super weird question. Do you happen to have a copy of the Q3 reconciliation tool? Nothing's syncing. Then Darren from procurement. Lauren, are you online? We're locked out of the vendor logs. Aspen is panicking. And finally, Anna, the CEO's assistant, who once snuck me soup when I worked through the flu. I know you're gone. I respect that. But please, where are the system backups stored? I stared at the messages, thumb hovering. The temptation to reply was sharp, electric, but I didn't touch a thing. Not yet. Instead, I opened the internal status page on my tablet. The usual neat rows of green check marks were bleeding into red and yellow. A note had appeared at the top, probably written by some poor intern. We are currently experiencing a temporary disruption in service across multiple systems. Please bear with us as we resolve the issue. Patience. That made me laugh into my coffee. Patience is what you ask for when you've ignored every warning sign until the dam breaks. In the group chat where the old infrastructure team still lurked, people started chiming in. Alex. Told you it would unravel without her. Mira. I give it a day before the board wakes up. Carlos. $10 as Evan blames her on the way out. Then, to my surprise, a new name appeared. Evan himself. Hey team, let's keep the energy positive. We're all in this together. Sparkles emoji. Hashtag solutions not blame. It took everything in me not to spit out my coffee from laughing. I could picture him in that sterile conference room, sweating through his shirt, trying to paste over a crisis with emojis. Meanwhile, systems I had nursed like fragile children were collapsing in slow motion. This wasn't sabotage. That's the part no one understood yet. I hadn't broken anything. I had simply stopped fixing what they never respected enough to learn. And maybe that was the most dangerous revenge of all. Not the noise of destruction, but the silence of absence. I leaned back in my chair, phone buzzing against the table, and felt the city move outside the cafe window. 10 minutes had passed. The real countdown had just begun. There's a difference between causing a fire and walking out of a building where you've been the sprinkler for years. I kept repeating that as the messages stacked up on my phone like hail. I didn't owe Evan a bucket. I didn't owe the company my lungs. But there were people inside I cared about. Quiet workhorses who never made the slide decks. That complicated things. Darren pinged again. We can't access the vendor hooks. Is there a fallback? Sandra followed. Payroll preview shows duplicates. If this posts, we're in trouble. Anna. The CEO wants to know if there are backups off-site. He's asking specifically about legacy fallbacks. Legacy fallbacks. Funny. When I'd created that folder 2 years ago, Evan called it paranoid redundancy. I called it not letting people lose mortgages because a vanity migration went sideways. I opened my personal archive, everything legal to keep, emails I'd sent with warnings, screenshots of approvals, the signed addendum giving me ownership over the automation scripts I'd written off hours. I had the clause highlighted. My name, their counsel's signature. Evan's countersign, lopsided, like he was in a hurry. Receipts matter. Not to win arguments. Those are cheap. But to protect the people who did the work. I typed Anna back. Finally. There is an off-site backup of company data. Confluence page, legacy fallbacks. Search within for Mirror Haven. Ask it to restore read-only access from the vault. It's company property. You're authorized. I did not mention my scripts. I did not send a zip. Boundaries are lines you draw before people try to move them. Within minutes, the status page showed a trickle of yellow bleeding back to green around the backup nodes. The invoices were still failing, but finance wouldn't bleed out today. A small, mean part of me wanted to let the entire machine seize. The bigger part wanted good people to get paid. My old team chat lit up. Alex. She's not going to let payroll crash. Told you she has a spine and a heart. Mira. Board rumor, emergency meeting at 5. Evan pacing like a treadmill. Carlos. Vendor just posted again. Service degraded due to client-side authentication issue. Translation. They broke it. I stared at the mirrored windows across the street. For years, I imagined what it would feel like to not be needed. Turns out it feels like standing on a shore watching a tide you used to control. You know exactly which rock will be uncovered next. That's the grief and the gift of competence. Prediction. Sandra called. I almost let it ring out. Then I picked up. Lauren, I'm so sorry, she blurted. I didn't know they were... She exhaled. Look, I'll keep this short. If the duplicate payroll hits, we are in breach with 3 lenders. Do I pause the run? Pause, I said. Tell legal you did it under the emergency stop clause. It's in the runbook. Page 3, I don't have the runbook. Check the Confluence page, quarter-end guardrails. Search stopgap. It's read only, but the steps are plain English. She went quiet, then soft. Thank you. When we hung up, I expected to feel smug. I didn't. Relief came in strange shapes, less like triumph and more like sitting down after standing too long. My email chimed. A message from HR, exit interview optional. Please return any personal items. Attached was a PDF that included a line about cooperation during transition. I laughed. Transition implies a bridge. Evan had bulldozed the bridge, framed it as efficiency, and now wanted to borrow my planks. Another ping. LinkedIn. A thread from our largest logistics client, polite on the surface and furious underneath. We have suspended integrations until stability is confirmed. Our patience has limits. The comments were a slow leak of reputational damage. You can mop a floor after a spill. You can't undo the stain if no one closes the valve. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it go. Then a text. Lauren, it's Sonia. Please answer. I picked up. Her voice was low. I won't keep you. I recorded the meeting. Ours. I didn't plan to, but something in me said to hit the button. Okay. If things get ugly, you should know. Evan said the word age before you walked in. He asked if we had risk on legacy staff cluttering the culture. I told him to stop. I wrote it down. I closed my eyes. Discrimination's an ugly word lawyers spell with dollars. I didn't want to fight, but I wasn't going to run from one either. Thank you, I said. Protect yourself. Email the notes to your personal account, then print them and put a copy at your mother's house. She gave a tiny laugh that sounded like a person choosing courage. He's going to blame you. He's already trying, I know. Are you okay? I looked at my cooling coffee, the muffin with one bite missing, the window I'd stared through instead of at. Ask me tomorrow. We hung up. I breathed. Across the street, a man in a suit hustled out the revolving door. Evan. He was talking too fast to a smaller man I recognized as the COO, hands slicing the air like he could carve an outcome he liked. They stopped, mid-argument, both phones lighting up. The COO's face shifted. Anger, then something colder. Arithmetic. Evan pointed toward the building, toward the 15th floor, as if the glass could be persuaded. The COO didn't look. He turned and walked away. Another email arrived. From Board Liaison. The subject line, request for conversation. The body was 2 sentences. We'd appreciate a brief call today. Strictly confidential. Your perspective would be helpful. I didn't answer. Not yet. I opened a new document and started a list. The dates I'd warned them about license expirations. The time I wrote an emergency patch to prevent double billing. The screenshot of Evan approving the deprecation of a service without a fallback. The clause assigning my scripts to me. No adjectives, no heat, just facts, receipts. Then the screen lit up with a name I hadn't expected. The CEO. Not a text, a call. I let it ring twice, 3 times, 4. On the 5th, I tapped accept and said nothing. "Lauren," he began, voice careful. "We seem to have a problem." I waited. "Could you come in?" he asked. "Just for an hour." I looked at the building I had kept from drowning, watched a gull tilt in the wind above it, and thought about the one thing no one in there understood. Help isn't something you demand after you've called it obsolete. "Why?" I said, and let the words sit there like a mirror he had to look into. When the CEO called me that evening, I expected anger. What I got instead was something worse. Desperation disguised as charm. "Lauren," he said, drawing out the syllables like we were old friends. "We've always valued your contributions. I think we just had a miscommunication. Let's clear the air. Come in tomorrow. We'll make this right. Make this right." That phrase stuck like a splinter. You don't make things right after you've let someone be tossed aside like kitchen scraps. You don't erase a smirk in a glass box with a phone call dressed in politeness. "I'll think about it," I told him, and hung up before he could rehearse the next line. That night I barely slept. Not from guilt, though it hovered around the edges, but from the flood of what-ifs. What if Sandra got blamed for pausing payroll? What if Sonia's recording got lost? What if Evan convinced the board that I'd sabotaged the company? Reputation doesn't always bend toward truth. Sometimes it bends toward whoever shouts first. By morning, the news had already spread beyond our walls. A trade site ran a small piece. Major disruptions at Eldridge Corp. Vendors report delays. No mention of me, but the subtext was loud enough for anyone who worked there to hear. I walked to the same cafe, ordered the same burnt coffee, and opened my tablet. My inbox looked like a storm surge. Subject lines screaming, urgent, critical, need your input. Most I ignored. But one caught my eye. From Sonia. "Lauren, board meeting at 3. They've asked Evan to provide a timeline. He's blaming legacy scripts. I think they'll drag your name into it. Please protect yourself." Legacy scripts. My scripts. The ones explicitly signed over to me in black ink. I opened the folder again, checked the clause, reread the scanned page like it was a lifeline. Ownership wasn't just pride. It was my shield. By noon, another message landed. This one from the board liaison. "If you are willing to speak, we'd prefer to hear directly. Off the record. Confidential." I sat with that for a long time, tracing the rim of my coffee cup. Part of me wanted to delete it, to let the building collapse under the weight of its arrogance. But another part, the part that stayed up through flu fevers and migraines patching their systems, wanted the truth recorded somewhere that mattered. So I wrote back. "I'll join remotely. One condition, no Evan present." Minutes later, confirmation. Link provided. At 3:05, my screen flickered to a gallery of faces I'd only seen on holiday cards and glossy brochures. Suits, muted backgrounds, the kind of people who ask about culture while outsourcing it for half the price. "Lauren, thank you for joining us," the chairwoman said. "We want to understand what's happening." I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize. I told them exactly what I had done and what I had stopped doing. How the backup nodes were still intact because I'd insisted on redundancy. How the payroll guardrails existed because I wrote them. How Evan's modernization cut through critical failovers with no plan. I screen shared the clause, the emails, the timestamps, dates, receipts. Silence followed. Not the awkward kind. More like the sound of people realizing their investment might not be what they thought. One board member finally spoke. "Are you saying these disruptions are natural consequences?" "I'm saying," I answered, "that if you fire the person holding up the scaffolding, you don't get to be surprised when the building groans." The chairwoman leaned forward. "And your scripts? Those belong to you?" "Yes, by contract." Another pause. Then she nodded once, slowly like a gavel falling. "That answers my questions." When the call ended, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty, like after running a marathon you didn't train for. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms to my eyes until the shapes turned white. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed again. Sonia. They cornered Evan, she whispered. The COO asked why he didn't check the contracts. He blamed you. The chair shut him down. Said, and I quote, she didn't sabotage us. She just stopped saving us. I exhaled. Slow, measured. And Evan? He's rattled, but still strutting. He thinks his father-in-law will shield him. Maybe he was right. Nepotism is stubborn, but cracks spread faster than pride admits. That evening, I walked past the office building. The lobby was lit, but the 15th floor glowed dim, screens flickering like dying fireflies. Through the glass, I caught sight of Evan. Hands in the air, phone pressed to his ear, the posture of a man insisting reality was negotiable. I didn't wave. I didn't stop. The truth had already started speaking louder than me. The fallout didn't come like an explosion. It came like a leak. Slow, steady, impossible to plug once you notice the cracks. By the end of the week, Eldridge Corp wasn't just in crisis. It was unraveling. I didn't need to read headlines to know. My phone carried the evidence. Old teammates sending screenshots of dashboards blinking red, vendors demanding penalties, clients announcing temporary suspension of services on LinkedIn. What had once been polished silence now sounded like 1,000 alarms going off at once. And then there were the apologies. First, Sandra. A short message. I'm sorry for not speaking up. You carried us. I see it now. Then Darren. You were right about everything. If you ever consult, I'll fight to bring you in. Even Anna, the CEO's assistant. I wish I'd had the courage to say something sooner. Thank you for everything you did for us. I read them one by one and let them sit. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give. Not yet. Evan, of course, reached out too. His tone swung like a pendulum. First, smug. We'll fix this without you. Then pleading, just a quick call, please. I'll pay you personally. And finally, desperate. If you don't help, my marriage is on the line. I didn't respond. Some doors don't need slamming. They need to stay open just enough for the person inside to realize no one's walking back through. By Friday afternoon, Sonia called again. Her voice was steady, almost relieved. He's suspended, she said. Administrative leave pending review. The board couldn't ignore the contracts, couldn't ignore your receipts. I closed my eyes, letting the words settle. And the CEO? Quiet. Too quiet. He knows this is bigger than his son-in-law. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like watching a house you once built burn down, except you weren't the arsonist. You were just the one who stopped patching the holes in the roof. That night, an envelope slid under my apartment door. Thick, cream-colored, the kind law firms prefer. Inside, a subpoena. Shareholders versus Eldridge Corporation. My name wasn't in the defendant box. It was in the witness list. They wanted me to testify, to explain how one person had been holding the scaffolding while leadership ignored every warning sign. I sat with it for a long time. The temptation was there. Revenge in a courtroom, truth addressed in exhibits and cross-examinations. But I realized something else too. I didn't need to destroy them. They were doing that all on their own. My role wasn't fire, it was mirror. That weekend, I packed a small bag and drove north. No laptop, no charger. Just me, the open road, and a quiet I hadn't felt in years. At a roadside diner, I ordered pancakes and sat in a booth by the window. The waitress asked if I wanted coffee, and for once I said no. My hands didn't need caffeine to shake anymore. They were steady. The truth is, revenge hadn't been the goal. Peace had. For years, I'd been the invisible one. The fallback, the failsafe, the person no one thanked until something broke. And when they finally called me legacy, they didn't realize they were right. I was legacy. I carried memory, continuity, the kind of knowledge you don't buy with consultants or Canva decks. But legacy doesn't mean obsolete. It means foundation. As I drove back into the city on Sunday evening, my inbox lit up again. Among the noise, one message stood out. Subject line, consulting opportunity. A smaller competitor, Stratum Systems, had been circling me for years. They didn't send emojis or promises. Just one line. We've always respected your work. Ready when you are. I smiled, not wide, but real. Respect. That's all I ever wanted. On Monday morning, while Eldridge scrambled through another all-hands emergency call, I signed Stratum's contract. 6 months, double the pay, half the stress. More importantly, no Evan, no nepotism, no buzzwords pretending to be strategy. Just real work, done by people who cared about doing it right. That afternoon, I walked past the old office one last time. The 15th floor was dark. A printed notice was taped to the glass. Visitor Wi-Fi. Welcome one. Same password it had always been. For years, I begged them to change it. They never did. I didn't laugh. I didn't sneer. I just kept walking, the city air cool against my face. People say revenge is best served cold. Maybe they're right. But I think the real prize is knowing you don't need revenge at all. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop carrying what was never yours to hold and let gravity finish the work. And me? I finally chose peace.